Welcome everyone. So today would be our first class, introduction class to the test series. So we'll try to understand the technicalities of answer writing, right? And this class is inevitable before you start writing the tests. Test, as you know, is mostly a means of practice, but then practicing a wrong method or procedure would lead to more of failure than success. Merely practicing the question is not enough. Okay, we need to gradually improve, we need to gradually evolve in terms of writing answers, in terms of conceptually understanding the question. Right? So I would say the first important thing to write a good answer, to improve the test scores and marks, is to understand the question, the right approach to understand the question. Right? Mostly we are only concerned with reading, and we want to read more and more, and we want to know the references every time. But these references aren't enough unless you have actually understood the domain of a particular topic that you are going to write. If you have not understood the logic of the question which is being asked, then whatever content you know will end up being a kind of, you can say, a mixed bag of answers. This mixed bag of answers will give you an average marks. Right? So the purpose should be obviously to improve the marks and to improve the understanding of questions and interpreting how the answer for a particular question must be written. Right? That is the idea of the test series. So we have a unique model here. We have 6 classes. We have 10 sectional tests, 2 mock tests which will be conducted over the time after your prelims examination. Right? So it is a lengthy process we have designed. It is almost like a mini crash course. You can understand this way. So today would be introduction class. And this introduction class would deal with 2-3 things. First, obviously, what is a good answer? Okay, what exactly is an answer, first of all? Secondly, what is a good answer? Thirdly, how to understand your syllabus, how to approach particular topics, what are the important areas which give you good marks in paper 1. Okay, how to actually pick and choose the questions also, that is also very important. Okay, then our next discussion would be on the tail words, right? The tail words like when you say comment, evaluate, scrutinize, review, describe, explain, critically evaluate, critically analyze, right, or criticize. So there are various tail words which are used. Obviously, each of these tail words will have a sense which the examiner is expecting from you, right? So you cannot say that, okay, all these tail words are very difficult to remember. Obviously they are, and you don't have to remember them. You just have to understand the standard format. That can there be a standard format in which we can write an answer so that that answer reflects the actual sentiment related to most of these tail words, right? So we are looking at more or less an above average procedure for writing the answers, which gives us obviously good marks, right? As far as paper 1 is concerned, so you must be knowing that paper 1 right? So paper 1 okay, paper 1, take it as more or less a conceptual paper. Fine? Don't focus too much on mugging names, don't focus too much on facts. Facts are obviously there. Okay, theories are there. Organizational behavior is a very important part, which is a very big domain which you need to study. Fine? There are some important areas which I will tell you now. Okay. So what is to be focused in paper 1 first of all, right? So these are some specific micro topics which I will be giving you today. Micro topics are essential to understand the domain in which the questions can be asked. This is the first step you should follow. Take the question papers of previous years. Don't see the questions per se. See the areas from which the questions have been asked. Okay, identify a particular topic and all the issues and the questions or the kind of questions that have been asked from that particular topic. Just jot down the topics, the major micro topics or micro headings of that. See how an interconnection or interlinkage has been developed with the other topics. Right? This should be your first step before you start writing the test series itself. Right? So you have list of micro topics. For example, okay, if we talk about evolution. Right? So evolution you have to understand in the broader context, starting from, let's say, prior to Wilson, what were the aspects of evolution? Do we actually attribute the evolution of public administration to the developments which happened before Wilson actually entered into the scene? Right? So, this, and you have to understand the post-Wilson. Right? Now you have to break this topic again. Now this is our major topic, which is your unit 1 given. Fine. Now you are breaking this into micro topics. So Wilson's vision is covered here. Wilson and Goodenough debate is covered here. Okay. Developments prior to Wilson is covered here. For example, when you talk about or divide this into Francophone and Anglophone traditions. Right? So from here you can start it, okay, or the contribution of Cameronists, right? So you can, use all this logic and arrive at the how prior to Wilson certain developments were there. Fine. You can also include your perspective of Western versus non-Western tradition, both. Okay, that can also come Kautilya, Machiavelli, Aristotle, Plato, MacIver, then Confucius, Chinese civil services concept of, Chinese contribution to the civil services system. Okay, then Indian context can also come there, right? And likewise, so you can talk about Treaty of Westphalia, then you can also talk about, or you can understand about how the emergence of nation states took place, city states took place, the Athenian democracy, all this can come in this perspective, right? Post-Wilsonian developments, obviously, you have to look at what were the later developments. Now these later developments can be classified into two parts. One, the theoretical, other is the functional, okay, which will include the social and political. The social political, okay, this will include mostly related to the theories of organizations. Principles and some new concepts which are there. Yeah. So trace the evolution from here, starting from here. Within these functional developments now you can cover, or theoretical developments now you can cover most of your unit 2 also, okay, along with unit 1. Now parallelly you have to draw a line, theoretical and functional developments. For example, develop a timeline or develop a chronology, right? So let's say 1887 to 1900, one benchmark, 1900 to 1926, 1937, 1947, 1950. Come here again, starting from here. Okay. So 1950, then 1970, 50 to 70. Right? 1952, 1971 benchmark. Power becomes powered actually, right? Then your neoliberal movement comes. Make a benchmark 1980. Then 1987, World Bank's agenda of good governance. Right? These are the major landmarks. Between them, there will be numerous developments, no doubt. Then you have 1992, the new public management comes. 2002, the NPS comes. 2004, the neo-Weberian state comes. 2008, NPS 3 comes. Economic recession comes. Economic crisis comes. Right? Then starting from here 2008, then we start from 2014 onwards. Okay, the global changes comes, the rightist government comes, lot of economic changes. Okay, this entire impacted by your advent of globalization. So post-globalization scenario emerges, role of community, decentralization, and likewise. So from here, some major changes taking place here. Right? Now if you develop a timeline, obviously, the timeline will have its own developments. Right? For example, see, I am giving you an example, you can do it very well. 1887, now take 290. Major contribution, Wilson's essay or Nicholas Henry's, basically paradigm 1 starts from here, right? But you can take this as one of the first stages of the evolution. So just take it simple way, Wilson's essay, right? Then Wilson and Goodnough's contribution, Wilson's vision of public administration, what were other social and political developments taking place. So you have to take theoretical also, and you have to take socio-political also. Right? So prior to that there was corruption, there was spoil system, okay, there were the elements of civil war emerging, racial conflicts were there, corruption at the municipal level was there, okay, administrative problems were emerging, and likewise the society, American society was in a flux, right? Comparative perspectives of Wilson also emerged. So see, theoretical and socio-political, both you have to understand, right? 1900 to 1926, the same way you can talk about the Goodnough's contribution, and then the dominance of dichotomy till 1926, then the emergence or the coming of Weber in 1920, L.D. White's first textbook, 1926, Introduction to the Study of Pop-Art, right? Then principles by Willoughby, principles of public administration coming, okay, public administration or an emerging academic consciousness or responsiveness towards the area that is known as public administration. But 1927 onwards, the management domination starts, the industrial revolution is already going on. Because of industrial revolution, the scientific management emerges as a very dominant theory, and likewise. So see, every phase, right? Like this is NWS, neo-Weberian state, right? NPA 3. In between, you can add here you have NPA 1, right? Here NPA 2, NPA 3. Now this is a parallel development going on, right? It is more representing the socio and political developments in USA. Now this is a method, this is a way by which you can aggregate or you can segregate your subject. Because this is still not starting the study, it is just developing micro topics around this. right? So whether you talk about theories, whether you talk about organizational behavior, whether you talk about post-behavioral movement, everything will come now under this. Are you understanding this logic? Right. So it's fine that you will have to now divide each of these chronological phases, timelines into its theoretical developments and functional development, social development. Now, once you are doing it, you are obviously establishing a link. You are establishing a link between them. Right? So your vertical linkages are also being established. Your linkage of one topic to another, one theory to another, Weber to Taylor, Weber to Fayol, Fayol to Simon. You are able to establish it. Right? So first thing you have to do is this. Before you actually start writing the test. So when you're revising it, when you're reading your content, okay, develop a timeline, develop a microstructure and link these micro aspects. See the previous year question papers and try to identify in which of these phases or dominantly which of these phases have been covered in the question papers. So I will tell you which are the most important points here, most important topics of paper 1. Right? Apart from your usual topics, I am giving you the extended topics, not the usual topics which are part of the syllabus, but how these topics or the given topics in the syllabus is not able to do justice to the question paper. Okay, that is the idea. So how we are going to find out, how we are going to tame that wilderness that exists in your question papers, right? So let us take it this way. Now, one very important concept that you must know is the Western versus non-Western perspective of public administration. Right? Then. Anglophone versus Francophone tradition. Right? Within this, you can talk about the common law versus the continental law system. Right? The British, American, Indian, the French and German traditions. What are they? Right? L.D. White has contributed, Waldo has contributed to this idea. Right? Then, obviously Wilson is very important, but what is hidden there in the Wilson that we don't understand is the critique of Wilson is very important. Right? And the debate. Should Wilson be considered as the father of public administration? This is one big debate, or if not, then who should be considered as the father of public administration? Or should Goodnow be, okay, or should Goodnow enjoy a better academic privilege and status than Wilson? So Goodnow improving upon Wilson, this is a part of this major topic only. Goodnow improving upon Wilson, or right? Goodnow improving upon Wilson, or for that matter, you will say, is Goodnow the proponent the proponent of the politics administration dichotomy. ये एक बहुत important aspect है that you must know, you must focus on, right? And why Gurno should be called as that, right? Then the next topic, which is similarly related to this, is that what are the neo-Wilsonian Wilsonian elements visible today? What are the new Wilsonian elements visible today? Right? Is Wilson relevant? In simple words. Take it at ease. Right? Don't hurry up to the things. You have to understand it very logically. So, is Wilson relevant? What are the new Wilsonian elements today which are visible? How can we link, or how can we understand the contemporary usage and the need of Wilson and his science of administration, right? And his perspective of dichotomy. Simply don't criticize it by saying public policy perspective. NPA talks about the elimination of dichotomy, but this is a very illogical, immature statement. The dichotomy is still alive. The NPA 3 also nowhere discards totally the dichotomy. The NPA 2 never discarded the dichotomy. Fine. Though it believed that dichotomy is fading away, but the logic of dichotomy still exists. When we talk about depoliticization, when we talk about corruption is a consequence of politicization, when we talk about there must be administrative autonomy, when we talk about civil services law, when we talk about a separate code of ethics and professional code for politicians and the bureaucrats. So dichotomy is still visible. Right? When we dissociate the political system from the administrative system in order to understand the failure of policies, the success of policies, and what should be the contribution of public servants. In terms of formulation and implementation, so we are definitely categorizing the civil services as a separate system from the political system, which has to be done always. When we talk about accountability, when we talk about control, when we talk about the administration serving the citizens or public-centric, citizen-centric administrative system, right? We all are somewhere referring to the undercurrents of dichotomy, right? So kindly understand this logic. Okay. Then let us go. So you can note it down if you want, right? And then again we have to go for some functional developments, like when we talk about the new public administration, public choice theory, like so. NPA, usual things you know, right? What is the important aspect of NPA that we need to know? Right? NPA versus GP, the traditional public administration. Then I am writing here itself. Then you have to know that the comparison between NPA 1, 2, commonalities and differences. That is one thing you must know. Alright? Alright? Then continuity and change that we say. Okay, number of questions have been asked. The continuity between NPA, okay, and now how? How NPA is post-behavioral, how NPA is phenomenological. This is also one important aspect. that how NPA is post-behavioral, how NPA is phenomenological. Fine. NPA discards dichotomy, positivism, theory building. 2018 question has been asked. Right? So you have to understand this also, right? Then further you can explore NPA versus NPM versus NPS versus NWS. New public administration versus new public management versus new public service versus new Weberian state. Right? Then NPA versus D to be dealt separately, right? Development administration versus NPA. Was NPA anti-developmental, right? So these kind of questions may be asked. Okay, what do you think would be the agendas of the new public administration in 2000, let us say 28, and likewise so or further. Obviously they are not going to ask 2028 in that way, but you can say they might ask that what could be the possible agendas of NPA 4. How do you visualize the emerging trends of problems and issues in public administration that must be dealt in NPA 4? Right? Then the contribution of Golombiewski. We all know Waldo has contributed. What contribution of Golombiewski? Fredrickson. Golombiewski, Fredrickson, Frank Morini, Guy, etc. Right? Also, you can link this to here that how NPA was visualized by different scholars. This question you can get this way, right? So new public administration, the critique of new public administration, that is also. When they are using the word NPA, that means it is new public administration. It has nothing to do with 1, 2 and 3. In general, you have to write, right? Then there were a number of events which led to the emergence of NPA. So, what was the context? What were the circumstances? What were the events that led to the emergence of NPA? That is also very important. Whether you talk about the Honey Report on Higher Education or the Civil Services Reform Movement in USA, right? Or the formation of the Comparative Administrative Group or NASPA, National Association for Schools in Public Administration, right? So whether you talk about all these aspects, you have to understand the context in which NPA emerges and what can be the future of new public administration, whether it was socially sensitive, whether it was society centric, what were the values of NPA, the usual things that you know, right? Apart from the usual things, you have to know this also. Fine. Then once you are doing NPA, obviously you have to understand the public choice theory. public choice approach. This also becomes a very important topic. In fact, public choice theory or public choice approach. This itself is a big question. Theory or approach. Right? Then social choice. What was social choice theory? Okay. Kenneth Arrow, Duncan Black, what they talked about and how the social choice theory was the initiator, okay, or one of the instigators to the emergence of public choice approach. Then what were the different schools of thought in public choice approach? Fine. What is the political economy, right? Approach. What is political economy approach and why it is becoming very popular? You can also link this political economy approach to the public policy, right, to the governance. What are the impacts of political economy approach and why political economy approach is transforming the public policy and the governance on the arena of governance. Then contributions of certain scholars, because we generally all read Niskanen and Ostrom, fine, but we don't read Downs. Anthony Downs, we don't read, so you have to know Anthony Downs, and then we don't read Kenneth Arrow and Duncan Black, right? We don't read Patrick Dunleavy, right? We don't read Olson. So kindly take their references also. Fine. There is a book by Alka Dhamija, Contemporary Debates in Public Administration. You can get many things there. Contemporary Debates in Public Administration. So you can get a lot of debates there also, right? Then schools of thought. So you study the philosophical context of public choice approach or public choice theory. Then you can compare various scholars, including Niskanen, Ostrom, and likewise, right? And then when you study public choice approach, obviously you have to understand the state versus market debate. The state versus market debate, which became very prominent. What were the aspects, what were the criticisms of the public choice scholars, right? Whether it is a theory of state or administration, right? Whether it is a theory of state or administration, that means, is it a criticism of the state itself, the political system, or it is the criticism of the bureaucracy only, right? So these things you have to understand, right? Then the state versus market debate that you read, right? Then you need to have certain points: public-private debate, state versus market debate, okay, bureaucracy versus market debate, right? You can also, right? You can also explore your bureaucratic developments with this topic only. What were the suggestions of the public choice scholars? Was there any suggestion or not? Okay, did they talk about any concrete alternative to the existing bureaucracy, to the existing monopoly of administration? Why? The concept of, shall I rub it? The concept of public goods, public interest, that also becomes central, crucial to understanding this, right? For example, they talk about Pareto optimality. In 2014, they had asked a question on Pareto optimality. So they talk about Pareto optimality. So these things you must know. Nicholas Henry में, yeah. So Nicholas Henry, public policy, this is there, right? Now, when you are talking about public choice approach, obviously, you will also link this to the new public management. So public choice approach was more theoretical, NPM is more objective, it is more clear in terms of its prescription, whereas public choice approach is not very clear in terms of prescription, fine, it is more descriptive also, right? So, well, let's say when you talk about PCA, link it to new public management, how NPM is a more concrete and objective manifestation of the public choice approach, how NPM is the practical application of public choice approach, and then you have to also understand the concept of neoliberalism. What were the elements of neoliberalism? Okay, what was the problems related to welfare state? Welfare backlash, failure of the welfare state, privatization debate, all that you have to link here, fine. So NPA and the NPM along with the new terrorism. For example, if you see here Patrick Dunleavy, so they had asked a bureau shaping model, right? 2016, I think. So bureau shaping is a quite late model developed by Patrick Dunleavy, 1985-87. Dunleavy has also contributed to the understanding of new public management, right? So when you are thinking of understanding public choice approach and its criticism over the time, you cannot deny the understanding of new public management along with the public choice approach. So NPM, right? Then the concept of reinventing government. Okay, the entire Rego movement. That you have to understand what were the changes which took place. Okay, obviously when you are visualizing it now, you have to understand this in this both in the context of developing countries. In the context of developing countries, the relevance of public choice in developing countries, the relevance of NPM in developing countries, and if NPM is a post-bureaucratic development. See, this is one logic that we are using, and every year you'll see whatever tests we give, whatever the mock tests we give, right? 70 to 75% questions are there in PubMed. A paper like public administration, which is obviously considered to be unpredictable, but you will have almost 75% questions in that paper. That is a guarantee that I'm giving you. If you are able to link this way, right? You'll get a lot of questions from here that we're doing. So it is a post-bureaucratic development, new public management, right? And how the elements or how the NPM improves upon the bureaucracy, that is also a very important discussion. So NPM versus bureaucracy. right? So we have to study that also. Then we have to link or understand how the NPM movement is still evolving, whether it is evolving, whether it is necessary, whether it is logical in the context of the developing countries or not. Should it be used or not? Is India witnessing an NPM transformation or not? How globalization has affected the NPM. Right? So you have to understand this also. Then NPM movement you have to study. When you study the NPM movement, now you have to understand today, right? Like in 2012, they asked a question, a very contemporary question which was given in American Political Science Review, which obviously nobody would have studied. Right? The demise of NPM or the NPM versus the digital era cohorts. So, is NPM dead? That means what? We just don't have to understand NPM, we also have to understand the debates around NPM. And are we seeing the revival of the bureaucracy? Has NPM outlived its utility or not? Now that is also an aspect of understanding, right? So, critique of NPM, okay, then NPM versus bureaucracy, NPM versus NPS, right? That is also an important area. And this can all be done when we are studying public choice approach. That is the most important thing. So, NPM versus NPS versus NPS. Now there has been a public value approach which has emerged. Mark Moore, right? Then what has been the impact of community-based models on NPM and decentralization debate. Fine. Now this is one way of demarcating the topics. Fine. We can keep doing it on and on and on, and we'll keep doing it. Don't worry. Okay. Before every test or before your test or within your test, when we are discussing, we'll develop a lot of micro topics, a lot of micro headings in that, and you will know that okay, what is important for the next test. So in the discussion of the test series itself, before a particular test, I would be giving you a selected micro topic of that. Okay, obviously I'll be explaining it to you rather than just giving or handing out the topics, because that is not understandable, right? That is not logical. So when we are starting with the test series, we must have first an orientation of what exactly would be the nature of paper that can be asked, how the topics can be linked together and clubbed together and can be asked, right? And whenever we talk about a good answer, obviously the good answer will have these 4 elements, 4 C's. Context, concept, content, that is the body of your answer, case study, which means facts, data, examples, specific case studies supported by the government data, government statistics, and a conclusion. Right? Now, when you're writing an answer, try to divide, even if it is a 10 mark, Fine. Even if it is a 20 mark, even if it is a 30 mark question, okay, as per the number of marks and the number of words, you can just elaborate upon it, right? So it must have a context, it must have a concept, it must have a content, case study, conclusion. For example, the question is on or let us take the question from the question paper itself. NPM is dead, long live digital era governance, Dunleavy's statement is there. Now, when you're writing, obviously, when you're thinking of this question, first you have to develop, okay, your some conceptual logic around what the question has been asked. NPM is dead, long live digital era governance. So, obviously, the question is trying to make a relationship between the new public management and the e-governance. First, okay. This is a very logical understanding of the question, that it is trying to establish a relationship between NPM and DEG. Now go to the timeline, go to the chronology we talked about. NPM कब आता है? NPM का context क्या है? NPM के circumstances क्या है? NPM, what are the elements of NPM? What are the elements of e-governance or digital era governance? Digital era governance कब आता है? Fine, quite late, 10 years almost a gap है, right? When it becomes very popular. So what would be the trend? What would be the developments? What would be the criticisms? What would have been the failures of NPM which created the ground for the emergence of digital era governance? Now this you have to visualize, right? How NPM does not have the elements which DEG has, right? तो इसका एक context है, इसका भी एक context है, fine? इसका context will help you in understanding this, but इसका context will help you in understanding how the demise of NPM is taking place and whether the demise of NPM is taking place or not. So write first the context. You have understood the logic of relationship, write that in the context, that this is how the NPM emerges, these were the important elements of NPM, and as NPM failed to, or as NPM could not create the impact which was desired, which was destined, okay, the emergence of ICT actually tried to fill that vacuum. What were the aspects of ICT? Now give a very brief logic here. Okay. The concept would now elaborate upon the principles of NPM and the principles of e-governance, comparative perspective. Content will now a description of this exact question. Focus on the content of the question itself. Question क्या चाहता है कि NPM dead है, DG will live, why? Write it. Without getting much into the nitty-gritty, just write it. Okay, yes, these are the drawbacks, these are the improvements. These are the drawbacks, these are the improvements. Then you support it. Support it with a case study, support it with an example, support it with the facts if you have. Right? Finally, when you're writing now, conclusion is the important part. Okay, do you agree with this? Do you not? Now, the important thing is that you don't summarize what you have written here. The important thing is that are you providing a conclusion based on your opinion or rational facts or data? Is the conclusion final? No, never. Obviously, when we are discussing this aspect, obviously we have to tell what are the alternatives. Whether we should accept this totally or not. If we don't accept it totally, why we should not accept it totally? So your conclusion would reflect more of rationality and logic than simply an opinion or a philosophical ending. It should not. So it must give the new perspective to the examiner. It must give some new alternatives, new dimensions. Fine. And obviously this will not be your dimensions. It will be the dimensions that you derive from the data, fact, or the development of further theories which have taken place in public administration. So you can simplify it by saying that no, the digital era governance has its own pitfalls. The digital era governance ICT is like a revival of the iron cage of rationality of Weber. It is more of bureaucratization. It is leading to bureaucratization. It is promoting alienation. It is dehumanizing the administrative system. right? So, okay, so we cannot totally rule out the existence of new public management, though its utility might have failed down in Western countries, but it is being reviving now, or it is becoming more relevant in the context of the developing countries. Now, this is a way of dealing with the question answer or answer. Decipher the question, find out the context of the key terms in the question, NPM, DEG, first key term. One dead, one will live, right? Obviously, these are more two opposing views clubbed together to make you or create a surprise value that, okay, how we are linking both this. This you might not have thought of initially unless you saw the question. Okay. And that's why it is important to break every topic into micro topic, link those micro topics or micro issues of one topic to another, develop a chronology of events, understand how one led to the impact of how one impacted the emergence of the other, and likewise now you can link everything together. So when you're writing an answer, you will have a comprehensive viewpoint. You will have a totality of understanding that this is why the question might have been asked. Right? What are its contemporary relevance? Sometimes the questions are asked because something was in news. Privatization bids are in news. FDI was in news. Okay. Market failure, financial reforms were in news. Okay. Role of RBI question. RBI and government getting into conflict. SEBI's role question. Right? And likewise, so many things will be in the news and they might be reflected in your paper 1 also. Understanding? So, we have to first understand that what is the nature of understanding needed to write a question, to write an answer. How the syllabus has to be twisted, broken down, reconstructed to understand what is the real nature, what is the real logic behind a particular topic. What is the concept behind a particular topic? In fact, when you are studying your topic, you can break it this way only. When you are studying your topic, you can actually deduce the entire topic or you can restructure the entire topic in this particular format. Read about Weber, find out the context, identify the concepts of Weber, what basic concepts he talks about, power, authority, domination, whatever. Right? Then develop a content, the characteristics of bureaucracy, the criticism of bureaucracy, the benefits of bureaucracy, why bureaucracy improvement over others. This is the content. You develop your notes this way only. Right? Case study, what are the examples? Who are the scholars who criticized? Who are the scholars who supported Weber? Can we see this happening in the society? Whatever he talks about, is it visible functionally, practically in the society or not? Right? Can we have relevant examples for that? Right? Then the conclusions. Okay, divide your conclusion into 2 parts. One in support, one against. That means one as the critique, one mostly as the pro or in favor of this. Then why do you criticize? Why do you support? Put that into the perspective. If you criticize it, then what could be the improvements? How these improvements can be brought about? If you support it, then what are the possible limitations and how we should overcome these limitations? If you support it, then technically why or what is your motive behind supporting this particular idea? How scholars, different scholars will substantiate your claim for support of bureaucracy. Right. Now this is a one way of dealing with the topics. So today is our first class, the introduction class. So I'm not getting much into the technicalities. So the next class, that is tomorrow, would be more about how to write a good answer with certain examples we'll talk about. Right. We'll also try to decode certain other aspects, important aspects of syllabus, like Simon is one very important scholar. Then you have your leadership and motivation theories, right? Your organizational behavior is a very important area. Then you have Herzberg, MacGregor, which are difficult scholars. Waldo is a difficult scholar. Peter Drucker is a difficult scholar. Then, to an extent, Weber, complicated scholar. Foley, right? More complicated scholar. So we'll talk about Foley also. We'll talk about Weber also. We'll talk about Simon also, and how you can deal with them, the specific questions that are asked around them. Right? Then you have motivation and leadership theories. Okay, and then certain things about public policy. Then administrative law. What are the domain? What are the aspects of administrative law? Okay, so we'll try to decode all that. Then certain references that are needed for you to revise. So I will tell you all that, right? And how we can, and how when once we discuss that, and how we'll also come to know how the questions have been asked in the UPSC. What are the trends? This will keep doing it over the time, not necessarily just in one class. So whenever we take a discussion, okay, every half an hour discussion, every half an hour in the discussion would be dealing with the next test, the next topics in the test. Right, the references which are necessary, how to improve that skill of answer writing. Answer writing is not a rocket science. Answer writing is not a defined objective product that you can just use it, eat it. It's not like that. It is more of a process. It is more of a learning. Slowly and slowly you evolve into it. And this is what the test series is about. This is why we have designed it in such a manner. Right? Then how to use second ARC. Right? So you learn over the time all of this. Okay, how to identify the current affairs for public administration. Okay, what kind of current affairs have been asked, why they have been asked in essence. Okay, is it a GS type current affairs or there is some specific pub current affairs. So we'll talk about it. Journals का use कैसे करना है, IIPA journals को कैसे use करना है. We'll talk about all of them over the time. Don't worry. So we may have one class or two classes or even three classes. It is not predefined in that way. Fine. So take it that way. Your learning is our purpose. Your improvement is our purpose, and you can say that how you are going to master stroke your public administration papers so that you are able to score 300 plus or 320, 330 should be your target. 330 plus should be your target, and we are here for you to deliver that. Right, and thank you all for your time and the response we are getting from the students. And already we have a lot of students there, and I hope they do well over the time and I can be of constructive benefit to them. Thank you so much for your time. Take care.